Oh, cool. We're live. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining. Happy Thursday. I hope you guys had a wonderful week. My name is Babbette Jackson, and today I will be interviewing the wonderful Olivia Herriford. This person, I have known her for 3 years, give or take. I
Yeah.
met her at a Christmas party, and once we sat down, I feel like she was one of the only people I had talked with the entire time because we definitely just hit it off. This woman right here is phenomenal, definitely one of my inspirations when it comes to tech. And just everything. It's Women History Month, and she was the person I picked to interview. So thank you for being here. And yeah, just tell us about yourself.
Well, um, where it all began. Well, I grew up in Compton, California, and a single parent household, the oldest of four kids. And I considered myself rather ordinary. But we always look back and we think, we never really know that we're, in a circumstance until somebody puts some words around it. But I have always been about knowledge and wanting to understand and to get as much education as I possibly could. And my father, who raised us, did not finish high school, was adamant that we get as much education as we could. And so as a result, I was really get into my studies. I love to read. In fact, you'd be surprised, it was an English teacher that motivated me to pursue, my interest in science fiction.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. She said, I was trying to make a decision about what I wanted to do relative to colleges that I wanted to apply for, and I told her that I was really interested in things that were related to, um, believe it or not, robots.
Wow.
And she encouraged me. She said, follow your passion, whatever it is. If that's what you want to do, if you feel that you want to go and get the education you need to be an astronaut, go for it. So anyway, that's kind of like was the spark to the path that I'm in right now. Um, and Yeah, that's really pretty much how it got started. So today, fast forward, that is what I'm still very passionate about, is how do we motivate more women and individuals of color um, on these paths to technology. Obviously, when I finished my bachelor's degree in the early 70s, um, you can imagine. I mean, there was no one that looked like me, and I would, and I really wanted to have an impact on that. In fact, as soon as I got my degree, I did get involved with professional organizations around getting more students interested in, coming there as a peer um, mentor for students. So I've always wanted to get more people that look like me, women, otherwise, that look like me. Bringing it around to just real quickly around the theme of today's conversation. I want to acknowledge some women's history here and how it impacted me. Um, I got to say, you can probably tell from the gray hair that I'm just a decade behind the women in Hidden Figures.
Mhm.
I benefited directly from them, and I'll explain why. Um, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson were working with IBM computers. If you saw I read the book and then I saw the movie. Um, as you recall, they were working with IBM computers, and these were new computers for IBM. right? These were being tested at NASA. And obviously, it got the attention that these women of color were the ones that were really testing that technology. Okay. Now, this was the early 60s. I was graduating from high school in 68. And at the time, IBM started one of its first affirmative action programs. And they came out and they were recruiting graduating high school seniors who had been accepted in colleges in engineering and science and math programs to participate in internships while they were in college. And I was a beneficiary of that. And I really think that that is my direct acknowledgement of these women and their influence on where I am today. And it was and I will always when I read that book and I said, oh my God, I didn't know that. I said, oh my God, it was because of them that I am here. So anyway, that's my shout out to the hidden figures upon whose shoulders I stand. That is some very important, women's history right there. So
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like I have a similar story to that, but one of the books that I read in elementary school was Warriors Don't Cry. And it's been my favorite book, and it was about the first Black person who like segregated the schools back in the South. And that just gave me a lot of inspiration. So I can definitely see where you're coming from. But let's take a step back. So you say back when you were in college, you took the brave step to step into the world of tech. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I feel like a lot of people know what it's like now, but a lot of people don't know what it was like back then. And I feel like it's so many, I won't say it's the same, but it's still some things that are lingering that people are trying to get empowerment around. So tell us a little bit more about that journey.
it was very difficult. I ended up applying to Northrop Institute of Technology, eventually became Northrop University, for a couple of reasons. First of all, I mean, I'm serious. I thought I wanted to be an astronaut, so I figured, okay, I had to go get a degree in aerospace engineering. And my best friend's brother had just graduated from Northrop University, so that was kind of that's how it had got me in that direction. But it was one of the most difficult environments. I felt invisible on an island, um, basically, lonely, very little, no mentorship whatsoever. I mean, I really didn't have any help at all. And I do believe if it wasn't for a couple of faculty, okay, and I'll just say, and basically, I mean, a couple. It was just two over the 5 years that took me to get my degree, that kept me going. And one of the great experiences was one of the computer science classes, as a team. And that was my first exposure to teamwork, doing projects as a team. We wrote a compiler, and just the whole experience of working together as a team with the faculty. He was a coach and letting us figure things out. And I mean, that was kind of my why. And I think when we run into difficulties and challenges, we always have to come back. Well, why are we here? I mean, what's going to help me persevere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other faculty was on, as we all need our liberal arts part of our degrees. And the course, I can't remember the actual title of the course, but it was on logic and reasoning and philosophy. It was teaching us how to be critical thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it. And he loved the papers that I wrote because, one of the things that you're going to an engineering school, there are very few people like to write. I love to write, right? And so he would just light up when I came into the room because here was somebody who gets it and understands that in technology, you need to have these kind of skills as well. Right.
Mhm.
But it was very hostile. I mean, Babbette, I mean, sometimes I would just, go home and cry, you know.
Mhm.
And finally, the last 2 years of my time at Northrop, they finally opened up one suite of the dormitories for the women. Of the 3,000 students at Northrop University, there were never more than 10 women enrolled.
Wow.
Right. So I was commuting back and forth from Compton to Inglewood, which was really kind of tough. And so I was one of the women that moved into the suite there on campus, and that really helped too, because at least I had the other ladies there. Okay, that we could, we had our own circle, we could support each other, etc. Because I really think that the biggest challenge, and I think it continues to be, is how do you have that surrounding support,
Mhm.
when you're running into, very difficult situations and bad behavior. Um, and yeah, and I don't know. I think, and I see in some cases some of the same situations going on in our classrooms today, where some folk don't feel included, they don't feel seen, they don't
Mhm.
be recognized for why they're there and what they can do to help. Right. I mean, one of the interesting situations that I had too was I failed physics one. Okay.
Mhm.
And then, and usually, and I know the faculty that I work with, that if you start to see a student struggling, you reach out to them.
Yep.
Okay. I had I can't remember students. I mean, a faculty say, "Can I help you? What can I do? Or
Mhm.
where can I direct you? Can I didn't have that experience, and in fact, this faculty actually, try to make it hard for me to take it over again.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then the sad thing is, now that I think about it today, I am fascinated by physics. Quantum physics, oh, I mean, that it's just a whole fascinating area to me. And so it wasn't like I had an interest or a lack of ability to understand it. I just I was
Got
just
it.
I didn't know, I hadn't developed good study habits.
Mhm.
It was just so I just wasn't getting any help. Right. But I stuck to that why. I stuck to that why, that I was there. I could find something that, was cool to me, what I was really enjoying doing, and then just stay focused on that. And then, of course, I had the support of I've always had the support of my father, um,
Mhm.
who would, just say, "Hey, you can get through this. You're gonna be okay. Just hang in there. Let me know if there's
Mhm.
anything I can do." But yeah, so yeah, it was tough. And then, and then it was actually just that the college experience was just the introduction to what the real world was going to be.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You speak of all that, and it kind of just made my chest curl up a little bit because it made me think back to like when I was in college. Because as you know, back in 2019 at Cal Poly Pomona, also down in LA, I was the only African American female to graduate from the computer information systems. And it was the same thing that you were talking about. I didn't have any support. Oftentimes, I was the only Black person in my class, the only female in my class. And when I was failing classes, I definitely had teachers who were trying to make it harder. There were washout classes. There were multiple times that I went home and I cried. I was crying to my sister, crying to my mom, saying I don't want to do this anymore. It took me 6 years to graduate. I've seen all my friends graduating, and people are like saying, why haven't you graduated yet? I'm trying to get help with all these classes, but my friends weren't in the same advanced classes as I was. And like you said, that was only the tip of the iceberg. Once I stepped out into the real world, it was like, whoa, there's more. But once I stepped out into the real world, I found that it was a lot more people who related to the experience that I was having, because I was only thinking inside of the college. And then I found different programs like Cyversity and all the Facebook groups and the Instagram groups and just all these different people who are there going through the same experiences that helped me kind of like validate it in a way where it was like, okay, so it's people going through this, but then speaking to you and hearing your story, it's like, wow, so we've been going through this for decades and things are continuing not to change. We have whole generations of people just stressed out because people aren't being seen and people aren't being heard. But it's programs like this, Cyversity, that are kind of helping to help those people get the resources that they actually need. So it's crazy.
And you know what? I had a couple of those also when I came out of college and started in my first job. I joined the LA chapter of Black Professional Engineers.
Mhm.
Okay. Who, again, a support group around, basically you can think of it as an industry affinity group. And we did a lot of work in going to high schools and colleges and to provide some support and resources for students. And then when I moved up here from Southern California to Northern California, there is an organization. I do believe it still exists, but I think the thing is that they may have changed their name. But it was called the Black Data Processing Associates.
Hmm.
you know, and data processing, I know, is very, very ancient term, but it was a group of folk in the industry that came together to support each other, very, very similar to what Cyversity does. Keeping up on industry knowledge, connections with employers, supporting each other in the work that we're doing, outreach to, other, people that are thinking about getting into this career path. And I tell you, if it wasn't for those organizations, I mean, the BDPA was where I got over my fear of networking. How you have to develop that. They say, oh, you got to develop your elevator pitch. You got to know what your value proposition is. You got to be able to feel comfortable with making connections, and just and I tell you, that was invaluable. So it's
Oh,
those kind of things that you're right. They continue to be a really important resource for navigating this landscape. Yeah.
yeah, I definitely think it helps with like imposter syndrome, because I feel like a lot of imposter syndrome kind of just comes from the idea of I didn't get the right resources when I was younger, and now I got the job without the resources, and now I'm trying to navigate through this whole new field by myself or without the correct knowledge or support group. So I feel like the younger we can hit them with the correct resources and the correct support, that imposter syndrome will start to, I guess, flare out in a way, because now they have the mentors, they have the network, they know how to talk, they have the skills to do what they need to do. And if they don't, they have all these wonderful programs out there in order to get the resources that they actually need. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, you work in diversity and inclusion. So my next question is to, I guess, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, how do you feel we can get more people of color or minorities interested into the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math?
Well, speaking, from my own experience, um, my interest has been, and this goes back to, you know, the very beginnings of why I decided to take this path, and that I've always being a science fiction fanatic when I was, younger. Um, one of the things I noticed very early in the theme of the things that I was reading when I was 10 and 12, 11, 12, was that technology was outpacing our moral development. Okay.
Mhm.
And that we cannot keep up with how to better manage it in our lives, in our business, in our society. Okay. And so, that is one of the reasons why I've always been interested in the human side of how we're showing up, how it shows up in our technology, in our products, in our services, um, and and that lack of diversity and inclusion over the years is very evident. Okay. In general, I mean, we don't have to say enough about how diversity in organizations, in teams, um, in creative process doesn't make for a better end result. Okay.
Mhm.
But yet, it's been so difficult because, people like to basically, they tend to be very homogeneous around, the things they do, the people they choose, people they hire, etc. Uh, so I really think that what we need to do is begin to um, really show how that has made a difference when you actually can be more inclusive, how that actually has an impact on the bottom line. It has an impact on the final results of whatever you're doing. But at the same time, I think we have some leadership challenges around um, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and belonging. And
Mhm.
I, I'm waiting for that to be acknowledged. I don't see it acknowledged as it should be. Um, but yeah, I could go on about DEIB and how important it is to me. But I think we're making the only concern that I'm having now is just that there's this whole backlash now on efforts to actually make a difference in that area. But we just have to be persistent. We have to show that it makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. I feel like that's a really big question, like how can we get more people interested? But I feel like the bigger question is how can we get more people involved? And it turns back into the resources, because even if we take a look into the world of AI and how people are raising an eyebrow to AI, because if you think about it, AI is kind of just the brain dump of the human mind, but it depends on who's actually programming it. So if we don't have diversity and inclusion in thought when it comes to AI, then those same problems are going to come out. But then it comes to a bigger initiative of, hey, are you guys actually going to hire those people to bring that diversity in thought? So that's
And I'm sorry, I didn't totally
go ahead.
answer your question. I think that how do we get more women and students and people of color on this path? We have to start early. We have to
Mhm.
out where, like, my interest. I mean, I started on this path when I was in middle school. I was exposed to something. I was exposed to a teacher. I was exposed to the things I'd love to read and to watch. And I think that's what I'm seeing working today, is that most of our, we're not waiting till students get into high school to start to get them interested in these careers. It's got to start in middle school.
Mhm.
For example, one of the things that we do at the Bay Area Community College Consortium, and every summer we do summer camps for middle, cyber camps for middle school kids and high school kids, and they're coming in and they're learning how to compete in capture the flag type competitions, and you watch them get so excited and jazzed about it. And they get and the other cool thing is that we use things like Discord where they can communicate and work together as teams. So it's been really exciting to see that here we're kids, this is their first exposure to something like cybersecurity, and they just get really excited about it. So I think the challenge that we have in some of our underserved communities and high schools, if they're just not getting the exposure. And so
Mhm.
that is what we need. That is what we need to do. And I really, that's one of the reasons I love working with the community colleges, because they know that that pipeline, where that pipeline has to come from, and that's the approach that we take. And I think it's working.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I wasn't exposed to the whole world of cybersecurity until I got to college. So at that time, it was a whole new world. But like talking to my peers in my college, their parents were like computer engineers and they were like taking apart computers since they were like in elementary school. And I was like, wow, if only I could have had that exposure. But also kind of just like seeing people who look like you in the industry and having those people come talk to those schools, because you know you can have some person who doesn't look like you come talk to your school or talk to your class, but you probably won't relate to them
Right.
on that level. But if you have someone who looks like you, possibly came from the same area as you, then you'll be like, okay, cool, this person actually looks like me. Even when it comes to like teaching, I feel like that's something that another level that we need to explore is just getting more people of color and minorities in the role of teaching, so they can speak the language and feel comfortable. Because I feel like in my classes I didn't really feel comfortable when it came to like even learning or studying or asking for help, because no one in my classes looked like me and I didn't have any outside inspiration of people who were doing the things that I were doing. But on the flip side, I guess that kind of helped me, because my why, like you said, was if I can do it, then I want every little girl, every little boy to know that they can do it too, given my circumstances and everything that I went to. But I don't want them to do it the way that I do it with no support. I
Yeah.
want them to have the resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so do you have um any advice for the next generation coming up?
Well, we talked about a little. You mentioned imposter syndrome.
Mhm,
Um, I think a lot of what we have to all I think so many of us deal with imposter syndrome. But my advice would be, uh, be courageous. Um, it's you're going to run into challenges, but I'm of the thought that everything in your experience is either going to be something that's fortunate, that's something that's very good, or it's going to be a lesson. And you can
mhm,
always take something away from all of your experience. In from my experience, one of the things I want to add, is that I think that really benefited me in understanding how I show up authentically, without feeling that I'm lacking in any way. I think the big difference that has helped me through that is I've been very fortunate that most of my work, um, in tech, has been in customer facing organizations. Okay.
mm,
And I think the reason that the my advice is, if you can get that kind of experience someplace, you know, as you enter and your career grows, um, that I think will go a long way in building that courage, building that confidence. And another important thing that being in a customer facing organization is that you get the bigger picture of the business. Okay. All right. You get the why of the business. And if
mhm,
you are connected to that, then you're going to add more value. You're going to be more confident, and you're going to be more courageous. Because one of the biggest things that I had to get over, my first job was in kind of like the equivalent of desktop help desk support.
mhm.
And the biggest challenge that I had to get over was saying, I don't know, let me get back to you.
Oh, yeah.
All right. But that's a learning experience. That builds confidence. That builds authenticity. You're not feeling
Mhm,
like you have to, like, you know, blow somebody off or give an answer that may not be. In other words, it really, really helped me with my courage. Okay. And then over time, relationships, the value that I brought to the organization, and then a lot of techniques that I brought with me when I got into leadership, because I wanted to make sure that whatever I could do to help the people that I was responsible for to grow, and to not, as you say, not have to go through the same stuff I did. Maybe they have a little bit easier time, right? You know, and so I really think my advice, if you have the opportunity, in fact, in cyber, right now, I tell my friends that one of the funniest sayings in cybersecurity is that, in your career path, is that you need 5 years experience to get an entry level job. Okay. um my advice to the community college students that I work with is just get in.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a help desk job, maybe it's a sales associate's job, maybe it's, in just compliance someplace, just get in. Okay. And then show and learn how to work with people, how to solve problems, whatever the problems may be, and then keep your eye open for those opportunities to move into the specific areas of cybersecurity that you're interested in. But just get in, because that 5 years experience starts with that help desk job,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. So that would be my advice, and that is, get in, develop your personal skills, get that systemic look at what the business is all about. Okay. And you're gonna become a whole lot more valuable faster than what you would think if you think you just totally have to be technical. Okay.
That's really good advice. So definitely believe everything you said helped me along my career journey. But I feel like those aren't necessarily things that they teach inside of college. And those were lessons that I learned once I got inside of the real world. So it's nice to have someone saying those things early, and then everybody who's listening, hearing those things early in their career, because it's definitely challenging to just hop into something. Because I feel like when I first started cybersecurity, I felt like I needed to know every single thing and I needed to be technical. But like you said, once I got my foot in the door and learned how everything worked, it counted for all the experiences that I have, and to not take challenges as, I guess, challenges, but to take them as lessons, to move you forward. Two more questions and we're going to close out. But my second to last question is, what would you tell your younger self, um, for advice? And then also, what would you tell your younger self that you're most proud of in your journey of where you are today?
Wow, those are good questions. Um, I would tell my younger self. In fact, I have to say that this is something that someone told me about 15 years ago when I was sharing my story about this. Is that I thought I had to, when I made the decision to follow, my interest in technology. I had I had another option, and that was I was into the arts. I was a musician. I played violin from the time I was 9 till I was 18, when I had to make the decision: did I want to pursue my career in music, or did I want to take the technology route? And then again, that's where the artistic, the writing, the design thing, that's where it comes from. I'm a creative, probably, and I so I would tell my younger self, you can do both.
Mm,
It's not either or, it's both and I think we have to take a look at life. So that is what I would tell myself. And then what was the second part of the question?
what would you tell your younger self that you're most proud of in your journey to who you've become today?
Um, I'm proud that I did listen to my father. I'm so glad, because I don't think without that encouragement around education, I wouldn't be where I am today. It's his inspiration that has made me a lifelong learner, and I'm really glad that I listened to him, and I owe a lot. I owe a lot to his support. He's all I
Oh.
had. And he was there. And so I'm just really, really, really proud of that.
Awesome. That's lovely. Last question. It's Women's History Month. What do you define as Women's History Month? What are you proud of this month? What does it mean to you?
Well, as I was mentioning to you earlier about, what I discovered in reading the book Hidden Figures, there is just not uh, uh, there is not enough shared about basically history in general. I think we have an issue here right now in our country is about, how much history do we really, have we been missing in our
Mhm,
education? And I really think that there's probably much I could learn that I don't know. Like I said, I mean, I wasn't aware of the impact that the women of Hidden Figures had on my life, and now I'm very curious about, what about the artistic side?
mhm.
I mean, there's so much that we've contributed, um, that I really wish was taught. Um, and I that is a mission kind of on my part. And then like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. So when I read something or I learn something about, my history, women's history, I share it out. Did
Mhm.
you know this? Did you realize that this is what would, if it wasn't for these people, these women, we wouldn't have, some of the um, conveniences and processes and systems that
Mhm.
have benefited society. So again, my history is very. I'm very, very, very fascinated by history, and um, yeah, I just think that we should be more about teaching it instead of trying to stifle it.
Very much so. Very, very much
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Well, that was my last question. My cheeks hurt from smiling so hard. This has been a wonderful and great
It
conversation, and I
has been. It really has. Well, we always do when we do
yeah.
get together. I really appreciate it. I really, really do. Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. I really appreciate this conversation. And yeah, thank you so much.
And
And
thank
thank you everyone for watching.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I feel very honored. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Indeed. All right.